Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I am Namita and today I'm joined by a very dynamic and inspirational guest. Kira Jean is the founder and CEO of the Dreamwork Collective, an independent print and digital publishing company that shares the region's most unique voices and powerful stories. Kira juggles many roles, from a passionate writer, speaker, to a qualified yoga teacher and life coach. Kira, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with you giving us a little background information about yourself and how you ended up here in the UAE.
That's a really good question. So I'm actually from Tasmania in Australia. I'm not sure if you can tell with my accent. I feel like I've lived abroad so long. Sometimes my accent's a little mixed. I am from there. I grew up in a really beautiful part of the world. From there, I trained as a therapist and was working with children who had autism and their families. And I straight out of university, I was doing that kind of work. And it was very, very rewarding, but also quite a lot to carry at that age. And so I stopped doing that and started doing yoga. I'd been practicing yoga for a while and became a qualified yoga teacher. And I decided to take a year out and figure out what my next move was going to be. So I used yoga as a way to travel the world. So I went to Central America, South America. I was in Asia for a while, and I would spend 2 to 3 months in different places teaching yoga and then moving to the next place. And a studio had opened in Dubai and they were looking for teachers. I decided I would come out to Dubai for a few months and teach yoga and get to experience Dubai. I'd always wanted to travel to this part of the world. And when I came here, 2 weeks into my visit, I met someone who is now my husband and I stayed here. So that's how I journeyed to land in Dubai. And now I've been here 9 years.
Talking about Dreamwork Collective, how did that start?
So once I landed here and met my husband and we got married, I wanted to find my feet and I was going to live here now and wanted to really establish myself and my work as a life coach within this new city that I was living in. And one way I thought I could introduce my work to other people was through a book. And at the time, my best friend from childhood and I were in touch, and she was quite ill and was suffering a lot from complications related to diabetes and unfortunately passed away at the age of 28 due to those complications. And her last message that she had written to me before that happened was that she had regretted that she didn't publish any of her own work. She was an incredibly gifted writer. I remember growing up, I was terrible at writing, but I loved it and I loved reading. And my best friend, she was just so gifted. She could write anything and it just sounded magical. But she had spent her adult life working for other companies as a copywriter. And at the time of her death, just before that, she was regretting that she hadn't published any of the blogs she had written or all the short stories she had written. So when she did pass away, I kind of said, well, screw it. I'm going to write, even though everyone's told me I'm not good at it. And I'm going to write a book about my journey and some of the work that I do in the hopes that it might help a few people out there. So I did that. And then I said, well, let me try and get it published. And it was so difficult. We're talking 8-9 years ago to get published here at that time. I did reach out to publishing houses. No one was interested. So I was seeing in other regions that people were self-publishing. So I said, let me try that. And it was still pretty challenging to do that. Not many people had done it in Dubai. I think I was the second or third person to self-publish here. I figured it out. And at the time that I launched that book, I had so many people asking, how did you do it? I have an idea or I have a book. How do I get published? And so I just started consulting people and helping them figure out how to publish their work and what their options were were in terms of traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, vanity publishing, all the different types, and just kind of advising people on how they could get their stories out there. And that grew into what the Dreamwork Collective is today. So every time someone came to me wanting help, I would realize that there's a gap in the market or an opportunity to help people tell their stories in a bigger way. And now the Dreamwork Collective is a fully fledged publishing house with a distribution arm as well. And yeah, it's become what it is today.
So what started as an emotional decision turned into a passion?
Yeah, I think a lot of the best ideas start from some sort of pain, some sort of experience that's a catalyst.
Absolutely. But you did an incredible job. I'm so happy, and so our listeners be to know that you fulfilled your friend's wish. So that's really great. You are a writer and a speaker, but which one do you enjoy the most?
I enjoy speaking a lot. It's a really hard question, to be honest. I get different sense of fulfillment from each. I find writing to be very internal. It's a very inward and reflective process for me, which leans to my introverted side. But speaking is incredible. To be in a room of people and have the opportunity to be in conversation or dialogue with others is fantastic. And actually, when I was growing up, I spent 18 years in theatre. So I'm not shy to stand in front of others. It's more expressive. It's that outward expression that you get from speaking that's always rewarding. So I don't know if that answers your question, because the answer is kind of both.
That does answer my question. And you don't need to stick to one. Like you said, both these things bring out the best in you and give you like a sense of fulfillment. So we get what you're saying. Also, Kira, like I mentioned, you do wear multiple hats. We know you are also a qualified life coach, and you work with creative and innovative entrepreneurs. Does your coaching and publishing work connect, or are they very different industries?
My background is as a coach and a therapist. So I went into the publishing industry with that toolkit. I didn't have a publisher's toolkit. I've had to learn that on the go. And I think I've leaned on my skills as a coach. If I think about coaching, it really is about asking questions and helping people discover what's within them and their potential and bringing that out. So I think it does help me when it comes to publishing, because I can sit down with anyone and through asking a few questions, know what that burning story is inside of them that would be so powerful if they just shared it. It connects in that way. And it also connects in how we nurture our writers and support our authors. A lot of the people we work with are brand new to publishing. They've never published a book before. They're a first-time author. And it can be a bit of a roller coaster ride, putting your work out there, having your work edited and critiqued, putting your name splashed across the cover of a book that's going to go out there in the world and potentially be judged. I think all creatives experience some level of anxiety when they put their work out there, because the work is so personal. And so I think my coaching skills also help me to support our authors through those moments.
Kira, we all know due to the ongoing pandemic, stress levels and anxieties have increased tremendously. Can you share some tips or advice for our listeners that will help them in their day-to-day life to remain positive, manage stress better?
I would say write. One of my favorite exercises is called Morning Pages, and it's based on a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, who I absolutely adore. And Morning Pages is this exercise where you write 3 pages in a notebook full of stream of consciousness thoughts. So you really just dump all the thoughts you have in your mind onto the page. And it's a very therapeutic practice. It unblocks a lot of the stress and the worries that we have. And it can actually unlock a lot of our creativity and help us to feel more relaxed. So I think writing is a really powerful way to be able to de-stress. But I think what's important is, and what I love about the morning pages, is that there's no objective to it. It's not the same as journaling where you're reflecting on your day or you're planning out what you want to do and achieve. It's really just about getting your thoughts out of your mind and onto a page. And then you close the book, push it away and move on with things. So that's a really powerful practice that people can do every morning. And it takes around 10 minutes.
coming back to your Dreamwork Collective journey, what challenges did you encounter at the beginning?
There were so many. And I think every founder and entrepreneur knows that feeling that in the early days, it's just one foot in front of the other. And every day there's a new challenge or a new fire that needs to be put out. One thing that really changed the direction of the business was distribution. I spent the first couple of years helping people get published and then quickly realized that they weren't able to get their books out anywhere unless they had someone representing them to be able to get the placement that they wanted in bookshops and the right kind of distribution. So I think the biggest challenge we still face today is in relation to distribution. And for us to be as powerful as we want to be as a business, but also for our authors to get their books out into the hands of as many people as possible, distribution is key. And there's loads of publishing houses and many ways of self-publishing that are incredible, but they lack that strong distribution to what they do. And I think those challenges that we experienced early on with distribution, not being able to get books in stores, not having enough books on our catalogs that people would pay attention to us, being an unknown brand founded by a woman who has no background in publishing, all of these types of things maybe slowed down our opportunities for growth, but they also allowed us to really see what didn't work in the ways in which distribution happened. We quickly set up our own e-commerce store and found really innovative ways to try and distribute our books and get them out into the hands of people. So that's definitely the biggest challenge we came across, and we still face that challenge today.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I'm sure you would have had many proud moments during your journey till now, but can you tell us one of your proudest moments during your journey and one mistake that you would like to be more cautious about if given another chance?
I think the thing I'm most proud of is when we support young authors. We have a Young Writers Publishing Award that we give out every couple of years. We have published 2 young authors so far. Maddie, who was 15 at the time we published her book, and more recently this year, we published Mara, a 13-year-old Emirati author. And I think I'm proudest of being able to let the next generation realize that their dreams are possible. They don't have to wait. And I think that ambition that young people have today is something that I'm really proud to be able to harness and have young authors out there creating books that speak to their peers rather than adults writing books for young people. It's amazing to have that. I think the biggest lesson, was that the second part of your question?
Yes, one mistake or lesson. Yes, let's put it as a lesson that you learned along your journey.
I would say the biggest lesson I learned was that passion is not everything, that you really need to have an operationally sound business that can carry the vision and the mission and the passion. I think working in a creative industry, you can get caught up in creating all the time. There's a million ideas that come about every day, and there's so many new stories we could tell. But unless we have an operationally sound business that can get those stories from A to Z, then it really goes nowhere. So I think if I were to give anyone advice, would be to invest in that early on and to know how you're going to get your work into the hands of people, whether it's through marketing, whether it's through distribution, online, offline, those sorts of things. It's so important to not just have the idea, but to know how you're going to execute on that idea and then capitalize it on. In the end, if you're running a business, you need to be able to keep things moving in the most effective and efficient way possible.
I was in fact going to ask you if you would like to share any tips with other startup entrepreneurs in terms of setting up their own business. I'm sure they have got a bit of advice you just shared with us, but if there's anything with regards to the rules and regulations here for startup entrepreneurs that they need to be aware of, if there's something you would like to share.
Yeah, I think I could speak specifically to setting up a publishing house. I would love to see more publishing houses in the region. I mean, every day I feel so bad sad that we have to turn authors away because we just don't have the bandwidth, the team to be able to bring every story to life. So I would love to see a lot more versions of us or totally different publishing models out there that can support people at all stages of their writing and author journey. I think the tips that I would have for anyone wanting to do that is to know why you want to do that in the first place. As I shared, I had a very strong motivation, like a very emotional motivation in the beginning. But as time goes on, the grief of losing my friend and that moment starts to take a different shape. And I need to make sure that I'm still doing this for the right reasons. And sometimes that motivation changes with time. But I think if you don't know why you're doing it, then it's pretty hard to wake up and go to battle some days fighting fires and doing what needs to be done to keep the business growing if you don't have that intrinsic motivation to do so.
What are your future plans, Kira?
2022 for us has a really big focus on children's books. We haven't ventured into publishing too many children's books across the year. Already, children's books is a really competitive space. There's loads of children's book authors and publishing houses that specialize in that. But this year, we have a really exciting subscription program. We're launching 9 children's books across the year, 3 series, and they're all really different, including one that's our first Arabic children's book series. This year, we are venturing into fiction as well. We have 2 incredible fiction titles. One is launching on the 26th of April, which is The Frustrated Women's Club, an amazing book. And then we have one launching later this year. So up until now, our focus has been on nonfiction and telling people's stories. We've done a lot of memoirs and things like that. So it's really exciting to be venturing into fiction and also children's books this year.
Sounds very exciting. So, Kira, with that, we have come to the fun segment of our show, which is called Rapid Fire. It's our version of a game show. So I'm going to ask you 4 rapid fire questions. Of course, the name says it all. You have to tell me what first comes to your mind when I ask you the question. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Perfect. So, Kira, weekend in or weekend out?
Oh, weekend in, of course.
Okay. Go-to comfort food?
Oh, my go-to comfort food, dark chocolate.
Oh, nice. Your favorite book?
The Artist's Way.
Okay, mountains or beach?
Beach.
Thanks, Kira, for playing along. Before we wrap up, we would like to ask you about your green pill moment. So if you took the green pill to go back in time and change one thing about your journey, what would it be?
It would be to go through the journey with less worry. I think worry has always been on this journey with me. I've done so many things to try and not have that lead determine where I'm heading and what I'm doing. But I think if I could go back in time and do things differently, I wouldn't change the journey. I would stay on the same path, but I would try to move along that path with less anxiety and less worry.
So, Kira, thank you for sharing your fantastic story with us today. I'm sure our audience will thoroughly enjoy this conversation. But before we say goodbye, could you please tell our listeners where they can find and follow you?
Yes, of course. So you can find us at thedreamworkcollective.com. We're on all social media at The Dreamwork Collective, and you can follow some of my coaching work at kirajeen.com.
Amazing. Thank you again for joining us today. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.